Gem International is a new diamond explorer in the richest diamond producing country in Africa, located next to the fourth largest producing diamond mine in the world. International Spotlight is on an 1109 carat diamond recently discovered in Africa by a fellow Canadian junior with a proven operator and finance team. Gem International trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol GI. Visit us at gemdiamondmining.com.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Eric Hadik, president of InsideTrack.com. Welcome back to the show, Eric.
Thanks for having me back, Jim.
Gold back on the rise a little bit now. What kind of a future does it face, and is it closely tied to the value of the U.S. dollar?
Well, one of the things that I keep emphasizing to my readers, and it really doesn't matter how many times I repeat it, I still get the same questions, and it's this serious misconception that if the dollar's going up, gold has to be going down, and if the dollar's going down, gold has to be going up. And theoretically, on the surface, yes, you could argue that since we're talking about gold priced in dollars, there should be a pretty consistent inverse relationship. But in reality, it's nothing like that. And the last several months have been a perfect reinforcement of that disparity between what's expected of the correlation and what actually happens. In fact, just yesterday I had done an alert for my readers and kind of really focused on this principle. And one of the reasons recently why gold and the dollar have actually traded together more than they've traded at odds has been the focus on all things European and all things Euro, everything from the ongoing Brexit negotiations and developments from Prime Minister May in the UK to even going back to Merkel's visit here to the U.S., her negotiations with Trump, and also her impending re-election campaign, the election in France, both the preliminary one this past weekend and the runoff that's coming up in early May, all the issues with NATO. It's just that there's been a lot of focus on the euro due to these developments. And so what has happened is that when there's high euro anxiety, the euro trades down, and the dollar and gold trade up in response to that euro weakness. Conversely, when some of that anxiety wanes and different things placate the worries, then the euro has rebounded, and at the same time the dollar has sold off and gold has sold off. So by default, you've had the dollar and gold trading down at the same time and or trading up at the same time. And I gave just a quick synopsis, just a general synopsis since the middle of January. So we're looking at over 3 months' time. And those traders that were just trying to sell gold if the dollar looked good or buy gold if the dollar looked bad would have gotten burned more than they found any benefit to that correlation. But if you go back to the middle of January, gold set about a 2 to 4 week peak and then worked lower into January 27th. At the same time, the dollar index sold off from mid-January into January 26th, so 1 day difference. After gold set that low in late January, it rallied for 4 weeks into the week of February 27th to March 3rd. At the same time, after the dollar set its lowest close in late January, it rallied for 4 weeks into the week of February 27th to March 3rd, almost identical to what gold had done. After that peak, gold pulled back into March 10th, and the dollar pulled back into March 10th. So for almost 2 months, the two of them were trading pretty much in lockstep. Then you had about a 2-week period from March 10th into the end of March where they did trade at that inverse correlation. But that only lasted those couple of weeks. And then from late March into mid-April, gold had a pretty sizable 2-week advance. And by comparison, it almost matched the magnitude of its previous advance. And at the same time, from late March into mid-April, the dollar saw a sizable 2-week advance, and it nearly matched the magnitude of its preceding advance. So even from a wave structure perspective, they were doing almost the same thing. The dollar turned down a few days before gold, but since mid-April, gold's dropped for about 2 weeks. The dollar's dropped for about 2 weeks. So if you look at that 3-month, 14 to 15-week period since mid-January, there's only been about 3 of those 15 weeks that have traded in the textbook dollar up, gold down, or dollar down, gold up correlation. So it's really not a very reliable correlation, and all that to say that I think you really need to treat each market on its own and look at the prevailing cycles and indicators in each market and treat them independently. Then you can see if there is some moderate correlation, but to try and trade off that can be very dangerous. And I think that we've got the dollar coming into a time frame where it could see a pretty important low between now and next week. And I've kind of detailed several of the reasons for that. And at the same time, I think you've got gold and gold stocks seeing the potential for a little bit more weakness into May. So again, there could be some similarities between the two markets, although it's not a perfect 100% correlation together. And that just makes sense because you've got the focus on the May 7th French runoff election and other Euro developments that are probably going to keep that confusing correlation at the forefront.
We'll have more with Eric Hadik right after the break.
Lotus Ventures Inc. is a BC-based medical marijuana company poised to launch into the rapidly evolving cannabis sector. Lotus is in the final review stage of the Health Canada approvals to become a licensed producer, having arranged facility financing of up to $12 million, plus building permits for its prototype indoor production facility. Shares trade under the symbol J on the Canadian Securities Exchange. Visit our website at lotusventures.ca.
I'm Douglas Mason, President and CEO of Rainy Mountain Royalty Corp., RMO on the TSX Venture Exchange. Rainy Mountain's Brunswick property is located in the Rideout Shear Zone in Ontario. With grab samples running as high as 32 grams per ton gold, a drill program will commence this spring to test the numerous targets located by recent groundwork. For more information, visit our website, rmroyalty.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Eric Hadik. Eric, oil has been taking a beating lately. Is that trend going to continue?
I keep going back to really a discussion we had a couple of discussions in late 2015 and early 2016, where all of my longer-term cycles and longer-term analysis were calling for a major multi-year bottom in early 2016, but that I thought that would initiate a 1 to 2 year bottoming process where we'd see crude trading in a range roughly between $30 and $60 a barrel, probably for a couple years. Now we're almost a year and a half since then, and crude has adhered to that outlook. But I think that there still is more of that range-bound trading, I know we were talking in late January, early February of this year, and I mentioned my intermediate cycles that were calling for crude to turn down in late February and then trade progressively lower into early May. That remains the focus, but that also means that crude could be nearing an intermediate bottom between now and the end of next week, by May 5th. And that also fits with some important trend indicators that I use.
So, Eric, what is that weekly trend that you look at?
Well, it's a proprietary indicator that I use, but the important thing about it is that a trend cannot change immediately from up to down or down to up in one period. So the weekly trend can't do that in 1 week. It actually takes a minimum of 3 weeks for a full-blown reversal to happen, because that trend has to trigger a sequence of neutral signals. So if it's in a downtrend, it has to go neutral a couple times, and only then will it be in a position to turn up. But that sequence also pinpoints when you're going to have failures, when a market is going to go from up to neutral but not reverse to down. So it's a pullback or a correction. And it helps pinpoint exactly where those corrections will often terminate. Excuse me. And so that's something that is setting up for crude oil for next week. So I am looking at a strong potential for an intermediate bottom in the early days of May.
We'll have more with Eric Hadik right after this.
Aben Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia, Saskatchewan, and the Yukon. Trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the pink symbol ABN-AF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Aben's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at abenresources.com.
Keep informed. Receive our weekly recap of thought-provoking articles, podcasts, and radio delivered to your inbox for free. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage, HowStreet.com. Welcome back. We're chatting with Eric Hadik. Eric, President Trump, I joked maybe he should open up an IHOP because he waffles so much. Yesterday he was saying NAFTA should be burned, destroyed, kicked out the window. He hated it. Today he's saying, I'll stay in NAFTA if I can just renegotiate the things I don't like. Does it drive you crazy, or the market's crazy that you never know what's going to come out of the White House?
Well, one thing that I did start to figure out after the first few weeks of the administration is that, and actually he's kind of telegraphed this. So if you're listening to the whole of everything he said, then it helps you put it in perspective. And that's even kind of like before Germany's Merkel came over and met with him. They were talking about how she was studying his past speeches and his deal-making book and all this, just to kind of understand how to treat those words. And my point is that every one of these things that has been said, you have to kind of view as the opening salvos in a negotiation. And so whether it was with China, and at least on the surface, it looked like it kind of achieved what he was hoping for. He comes off real strong. We're going to declare China a currency manipulator. We're going to redo all our trade. So then President Xi comes over here and they meet, and basically those initial statements and threats, for lack of a better term, are then used to put Trump in a little bit better negotiating position. And when he brings up the topic of North Korea, all of a sudden, at least from what we've heard, he gets a little more receptive response from China. And so, you kind of go back and you view those previous statements in that perspective, and you start to see that so many of the tweets and the just impulsive sounding statements thrown out there, for the most part, they're a bargaining tool or a bargaining chip. And it's like he's coming into a negotiation looking to lowball whatever it is he wants to buy, and the person on the other side of the table, starts out trying to get the top price. And so they each kind of go back and forth, and it sounds pretty threatening at first, but all the while he starts coming up on his bid a little bit, and they start coming down on their offer, and before you know it, something in the middle is achieved. So I see the same thing with NAFTA and where Canada and Mexico are concerned, and right down to the border wall with Mexico, all of that there's certainly some of the pandering to his base and needing to at least look like he attempted to fulfill each of his campaign promises, but what that ends up materializing as, when we look back in a year, it's probably not going to be near as extreme as it sounded during that first negotiating statement.
Well, he keeps saying, or did say, that, excuse me, his budget proposals would be closely tied to the building of the wall along the Mexican border. Now it seems that he is willing to, again, compromise just to make sure the U.S. doesn't run out of operating cash this weekend.
Exactly. And I think each time the first statement is put out there to make sure that his base knows that he's doing exactly what he promised to do, and then, months or years down the road, if anyone challenges him on any of those things, it'll be easy for him to say, well, look, here's where I said I was going to do it, but then Congress and, the federal judges and everyone else just shot me down. I did everything I said, or at least I initiated everything I said I would, but oops, it just didn't. I had no control. And so I think that you get the theoretical ideas put forth first. Then he probably, it's looking like he's listening a bit more to more realistic advisors around him as to what can be achieved, what can't. He probably had a couple people in his ear saying, if you do anything to create a government shutdown, you're probably going to be the one blamed for it. Even though you'll want to, blame the Republicans, blame the Democrats, blame the Freedom Caucus, blame whoever, ultimately it'll look like it was your stubbornness on the border wall that caused this shutdown. And he's probably getting a little more realistic with some of this and saying, okay, as long as I can still make it sound like I'm pursuing this and I'm not turning my back on my promises, then okay, we can kick the can down the road a little farther.
Well, he certainly does seem to be a guy who skipped his civics classes in high school and college, because he seemed surprised that Lincoln was a Republican, and the other day he was surprised that the Republican Party is actually made up of several different factions.
I think there's a lot about governing that has been a surprise, and probably the only, when you're looking for those glimmers of hope, is that there have been some actions and some responses that seem to reflect a growing realization that, okay, this is a bit more complicated than I thought. Evidently, I can't just come in and tell all my underlings what they have to do and have it done. government is nothing like a corporation. And I think that reality is starting to settle in. We also seem to be seeing less of the impulsive 2 a.m. tweet storms, and things are starting to move forward a bit more presidential, although there still is plenty of room to improve on that. But I think there is some realization of the challenges in government that they've been hitting him right upside the head numerous times, and now he's starting to figure out from a deal-making perspective how to accomplish what he wants to achieve.
It also seems to work if you want something done in your favor. You have to meet with him face to face. And I guess Prime Minister Trudeau is going to have to do more of that because he has met with Trump. He was one of the first to do that. But maybe he has to drop by the White House every 3 or 4 weeks just to make sure that the president remembers all the good things they said.
Yeah. I mean, either the White House or Mar-a-Lago, whichever might be the case. But it does seem like several of those leaders that have come and met have at least gone away with maybe not always positive developments, but a lessening of the negative developments that were initially on the surface. And again, I'm not sure how Germany felt when they were done, but China certainly left their meeting with pretty positive, or at least less negative, developments, and some of the other world leaders as well. So I think you're right in that case, and it is a whole ongoing negotiating, positioning, bargaining situation. So the more often you're engaged in that negotiation, the better off you're probably going to be.
And it was interesting that Trudeau and Ivanka went to see Hamilton together. So there seems to be some kind of a family connection between them.
Yeah, and I think that when you look at the last month or two, you're also seeing what has been covered pretty in-depth in the news, and that is kind of the shift in the White House as to which advisors hold the greatest sway over Trump. And in the early weeks, it sounds like it was Bannon, and in the more recent weeks, it's the Kushner-Ivanka pair that
he trusts his family.
More influence.
Yes, he trusts his family.
Yeah, exactly.
Eric, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thanks for having me back, Jim.
My guest has been Eric Hadik, president of InsideTrack.com. You're listening to HowStreet.com Radio. Find us on Twitter at TalkDigitalNet. Our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Questions for the show or our guests can be emailed to info@HowStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com Radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com Radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.